Well, Saturday night, it's going to be a pressure game that's going to end badly for either Penrith or Parramatta, because you'd have to admit that a loss for either of these sides at this point in the season, they'll be bitterly disappointed given their own expectations that they hold internally. James Hooper has said gone in 80 minutes why Para and Penrith have everything to lose in this final showdown. So a very different tone. I mean, you're saying how brave the Roosters have been, and a loss, you know, it would be disappointing but totally understandable. A very different kettle of fish for these two sides in action.
Well, there's no excuse, is there? I mean, obviously there's a lot of pressure on both of them. Penrith coming off a really disappointing performance last week, and Para, you know, we've spoken about it before, and you know, if Parramatta will go out, they won last week, but if they lose this week, suddenly the heat's on Brad, the heat's on a playing squad that's got a lot of players coming off contract. So that's where the pressure's coming from for them, because they need to win. They need to show, you know, for Brad that he's the coach who can get them to the next level, and for those players who are basically playing for their future at the footy club. So completely different reasons, I imagine, but the same motivation, just to win a grand final, obviously.
Penrith run the risk of really creating a reputation. If they lose this week, they run the risk of creating a reputation as
chokers. You don't want to
choker.
say
Yeah.
You're trying to think of another word.
I think it's lightweight. Seriously, but they do, because magnificent season last year and just got outclassed grand final day. Had a great season. They lost as many games as Melbourne through the home and away rounds. Even though Melbourne won the minor premiership, they had a magnificent season that year. Nathan Cleary lost his first game all year last weekend. So that's how well they've played. But if they go out in straight sets, everybody's going to be sitting back. And let's remember, everybody says this premiership window from Penrith is wide open. It's wide open, but next year it closes a little bit, because you've got Kikau's going to go to market, everybody's going to come up and their values are going to go up. It does close a little bit, and plus you're going to have this stigma if they lose, the stigma of having, again, been on the big stage, and they got outclassed last week, being on the big stage this week. If they go down again, it's going to ask a lot of questions.
Absolute belter. You know, Kenny just covered all the storylines, but as a player, this is what you thrive in, because come Saturday night, you need to perform, and ramifications are huge for everyone involved in this club. So I love the fact that they're evenly balanced too. Front row is going to be physical. Halves are playing their best footballs of their careers. They've got some exciting outside backs who can score points. So this is going to be won literally in the middle third of the field, and I can't wait to see which halfback starts pulling the strings again on top.
And Penrith are so used to blowing teams away that the minute they got, I thought they lost all their composure last week against South late in the game, when there was like confusion. This just should be working, but it's not. But they couldn't find a way through it. So if it's there this week, and again it's a tight game, and they don't have many tight games, and as well as the halves do through the origin period, and as well as they've gone all season long, to Cooper's point, this is their bread and butter this week. This is the game they have to deliver, and it's got to be a tight game. This is where you pay the big bucks to get these results this weekend. So that's what the pressure brings this weekend for these guys.
I'm feeling a little sad this game isn't in Sydney at Stadium Australia.
Wouldn't it be enormous?
You'd have 70,000, 80,000 people there for that game. Well, I'm sure we'll get a good crowd up in Queensland, but you know, for the Western Sydney, this is a Western Sydney blockbuster. I mean, these are the two big power clubs in Western Sydney. It would have been enormous at
and so much Western Sydney talent on show as well. And after falling short in last year's decider, bringing home the Provan Summons Trophy back to Western Sydney is the only thing that matters for these young Panthers.
You know, this is my hometown. A lot of these boys I grew up with, so it's been a childhood dream come true. You know, to play for the Panthers and play for my hometown, and you know, if it comes this year, then it will be pretty massive for us in our area. So hopefully.
It's exactly what you're talking about, that ownership of that footprint. Our friends, our family, my teammates, we've been together since our juniors. This is the only thing we want to do, is bring home this trophy, because it's their identity, it's their community, it's their club. It's exactly what they've wanted to do, and that makes Penrith very, very special. Yeah, it does, and that's not going to win you the competition just because you want it, because there's 5 other teams left that want exactly the same thing. So for me, it's about, you know, the emotion of everything that's happened around both teams this week in terms of Penrith and Parramatta. Can you go out, put that to one side, put it to the back of your mind, and go out and do the processes faster, longer, stronger than the opposition? I can't talk this game up enough. It's going to be a bell ringer. We've just seen some clips there, Cooper, of Luai playing last weekend where he was below his best. What's the trick for him this week? Like, does he have to? What's he got to do to turn it around? Like, because it is a big test for him this week, because he
I don't want to say the jury's still out on him, but he's still got a little bit to prove, hasn't he?
Yeah, so his name's like the Chief Energy Officer,
Yes.
right? Give him the microphone, give him the jukebox, give him everything to get his mojo back, because in big games, if you start hoping and second-guessing, all of a sudden you hesitate for half a second. You cannot hesitate. The team that goes out for this game from the start will end up winning. The thing that creeps into performances in big games is you don't want to be the player that stuffs up. You don't want to go out and make the error that leads to a try. So that hope and hesitation actually allows the other team to come forward. So whoever really has the physicality on song, but really driven by the correct mindset, will get this job done.
Even without Nathan Cleary, Jerome Luai said, without him, I'm a shambles. And so I think, he has that in the back of his mind that, he needs Cleary with him and they both need to have that connection humming along.
We had Cleary there last week, though, and he was
quiet.
well below his best.
But that's
he was
almost the
making
root
bad
of his
errors.
poor form. I mean, his form dipped when Nathan was out and he was in charge of the team and he didn't play really well, and he put his hand up and acknowledged that. I went back into my shell a bit because I was too worried about controlling the team and not playing the way I play, and I think that's still, you're seeing a hangover from that still.
And I think South's defence did a good job in nullifying Cleary. But for Luai and Cleary, if there's an opposition that stops you, you've got to find option A, B and C to get around, because you just can't throw your hands up and say, I've been stopped today. You need to find a way.
Where does it go big picture, you reckon, Reedy, for the losing club? Like, they go back, Parramatta or Penrith go back home on Monday or Tuesday. The Parramatta board are going to say, well, Brad,
I think it's a
you
big
got
issue
them past
for Parra.
Newcastle, but you couldn't get them any further. And the Penrith board are going to say, well, that's 2 years in a row where we've had the best team for much of the season and failed to really kick.
I think it's a bigger issue for Parra if they lose, just because their coach is about to enter the last year of his deal. They've got about 7 players who are about to enter the last year of the deal. They've got a lot of juggling to do in terms of their salary cap, but also potentially their coach. I mean, we all like Brad. We all hope. I can't see the club sacking Brad. I just don't think they've got that mentality. But I could see them saying to Brad, mate, we're not going to extend your contract. This is your last year.
There's been a little bit of infighting and friction within the club.
There's been talk about that. But Penrith, I mean, Ivan's obviously got a long-term deal there. I mean, if they made a grand final last year, they've got some kids there, and they've got a group of players who are coming through together, and they don't have that many players off contract. I think they re-signed Moses Leota this week. They've only really got Arpi and Viliami Kikau, and I think Dylan Edwards is the other bloke who's off contract in a year's time. So,
whichever team loses, I think you keep the coach. But Brad Arthur needs to, he needs to come up with an option B once his team loses that power game. I think that's the issue with Parramatta. If you stop the power game, then they don't have option B to go to. With Penrith, well, you got to go all in on Cleary and the gang again. As simple as that. You go all in again.
I just don't see the modern Parramatta as a club that'll sack its coach. I can see them saying to him, Brad, we won't extend you. I just can't imagine they would sack Brad. It doesn't seem in the DNA of that club anymore.
It's such a different story than the other game, though, where both teams, for completely different reasons, Manly and the Roosters, are both sitting and saying, we've done pretty well this
It's
year.
all right. Pretty happy with it.
Coach,
It is. It's such a different atmosphere, isn't it? It's amazing.